Right everyone, it is Finn here and welcome to a brand new video where today I'm going to be telling you who the best footballer from every single African country is. Yes, you heard me correct, every single African country, so we have 54 different countries to go through and therefore 54 different players to talk about. Now obviously this video would drag out and be way too long if I did them all within one video, so that is why I'm going to be doing this in a two-part series, this obviously being episode 1. Now I am going to be doing this in alphabetical order, so today in part 1 we're going to be talking from A all the way to Algeria, all the way to Libya, and of course if you guys do want a part 2, which I believe would be Madagascar all the way to Zimbabwe, you're going to have to get this video to 40 likes. Of course this video takes time to do, a lot of research goes into it, so of course if you want to see a part 2, make sure to hit the like button down below. Of course a part 2 would include all your teams like Nigeria, Senegal, all of those teams. Now of course before jumping into this video, let me just explain the ground rules of how I picked the players, the best player for every single country. Now of course these are current players for their teams in 2022, so of course please do not get offended if I don't choose Didier Drogba for Ivory Coast.
From Norway is the strongest official.
And along with that also, if a player moved overseas although they were born in Africa, like for example they were born in Ghana but moved and decided to play for the French national team, I also will not pick them. Hopefully those rules are somewhat easy to understand, hopefully not too complicated. Either way, I'm sure you guys will pick up on the idea as we go along, so without wasting any more of your time, let's jump into it. So jumping into team number 1 of all my African countries, we start off with the likes of Algeria. Now of course this is going to be an extremely easy one to do, as it just has to be Riyad Mahrez, maybe one of the easiest teams to do. I do believe that on his day, Riyad Mahrez is in the top 5, if not top 3 best African footballers in the entire world. Obviously we know what he did for Leicester City, being their player of the season in the season that they won the Premier League. Obviously currently for Manchester City, an absolute beast, and I mean I just had to choose the Algerian captain. It's a pretty easy decision. Nation number 2 is going to be Angola. Now I'm not gonna lie, a part of me really wanted someone like Helder Costa to be their best player, but unfortunately ever since swapping his international allegiances, he hasn't quite lived up to the name that we thought he would. So of course I've gone for the likes of Clinton Mata, of course the 29-year-old right back who plays for Club Brugge in the Belgian Pro League. Now of course he pretty much has been their standard main right back for years now, and of course has been their main in the league and has also been their main right back in the Champions League. Although maybe not the biggest name in world football when it comes to right backs, he is extremely reliable, and a country like Angola are probably very happy to have him. We then move on to our first B team, or country that starts with a B, should I say. And of course the player I've gone for has to be the Brest striker. I believe it's pronounced Steve Bony, sorry, I'm not too sure how to pronounce it. But of course the former Huddersfield striker has been captaining Brest in the French league for quite some time now. And to be honest, as a striker, he's pretty decent. I mean 3 goals in 6 World Cup qualifier games for Benin, 9 goals in 35 League 1 games last season. Once again, not the biggest name in world football, but a really decent striker. Botswana is next. Now, I hate to say it as a Southern African, I hate to say it, but Botswana, I really struggle to find a top quality player for you guys. Look, I really want Southern African teams to do well, but unfortunately the only name that I could really find an argument for is a man by the name of Kabelo Siakaneng. I'm sorry, I probably butchered that, but of course the left wing plays for OCK in the Moroccan league. Now, as we know, Morocco, one of the toughest leagues in Africa, so of course that by itself is pretty good. Obviously looking at him statistically, 8 goals and 8 assists in 26 league games in Morocco. Once again, as I said, I know it's not the biggest name in football, but he seems to be a really decent player. We then move on to a team that, I'm not gonna lie, I'm quite a fan of this team, as it is going to be Burkina Faso. Now, once again, I'm not gonna lie, heading into this, I really wanted to go for a player like Bertrand Traoré, but the fact that he doesn't play that many games for Aston Villa at the moment, once again, it's kind of a turn down, and I really wanted to go for the likes of Coffee. Maybe that's just because I'm a huge Coffee fan myself. The goalkeeper, he is brilliant, but at the end of the day, I had to go for the likes of Edmund Topsoba. As we know, the 23-year-old centre-back has been crucial in the growth of Bayer Leverkusen over the last 2-3 years. They have gotten rid of some big names over the last few transfer windows, but once again, a top-quality centre-back. He's been linked to the likes of Chelsea, he's been linked to the likes of Real Madrid. Once again, whether he'll get that big money move or not, I'm not too sure, but all I can say is that he is a world-class centre-back and a huge asset to this Burkina Faso team. Burundi next, and once again, unfortunately, one of those teams where I really struggled to find a player. Look, that's going to be a common theme throughout this video and maybe even part 2 if we get there, but a lot of these teams have a very obvious favorite or best player, and a lot of these teams don't really. Look, unfortunately, when looking at Burundi, the only player that I could really find an argument was a man by the name of Yusuf. I'm sorry, there's just no way I'm going to be able to pronounce that without my tongue literally falling off. But of course, looking at this player, he currently plays for Istanbul. Obviously, whether he plays as a centre-back or centre midfielder, he can do a decent job. He can essentially play all over the pitch, but of course, the most common position he plays in is in that defensive midfield role. As we know, Istanbul are a team that's really kind of risen in the last 10 years, if even, and once again, a player who seems to be a huge part in the role of Istanbul's growth. We then move on to the nations that begin with the C, and of course we start off with Cape Verde, a team that played really well as a team, may I say, in the recent African Cup of Nations. Although saying that individually wise, I did struggle to find an individual to pinpoint, but at the end of the day I settled with the likes of Javan Capral, obviously a left winger who's currently playing for Sporting CP in the Portuguese league. Of course, as we know, a big strong team in the Portuguese league, one of the most famous teams in world football. Obviously he went out on loan to Lazio last season. Once again, he's only 24 years old, very young, very promising. He gets a goal or assist here and there. As I said, not a world-class player, but he contributes when he needs to. Next up, we've got giants in the African football world and in the football world as a whole, as we have Cameroon. Now, of course, Cameroon came 3rd place in the recent African Cup of Nations. We will be seeing them at Qatar in the 2022 World Cup. Of course, we know this is a team that is filled with some absolute superstars, and although I was very tempted to go for the likes of Vincent Abubakar, who's just a beast of a striker, obviously Golden Boot winner in the African Cup of Nations, I just couldn't turn down the likes of Carl Tucker Kombi. Obviously scored more goals than anyone bar Vincent Abubakar in the African Cup of Nations, 5 goals in 7 games, plays for Olympique Lyon in the French league, where at 29 years old, 12 goals in 30 games and obviously 30 French league games. Obviously when it comes to the Europa League, 6 goals in 10 games. As we know, Carl Tucker Kombi is an absolutely lethal attacker. Whether he plays as a striker or as a winger, this man is definitely a talented footballer and definitely tricky to choose him over some others in this Cameroonian team. Central African Republic is next. Now, once again, I'm not going to lie, there weren't too many options to pick for here, and at the end of the day, it ended up being a relatively easy decision to make with Jeffrey Kondogbia. Now, as we know, he's played as a defender and as a midfielder for Atletico Madrid and played a very big role in them winning the La Liga title about 2 seasons ago. Now, once again, as I said, there aren't too many big names from the Central African Republic that I could find, but as we know, Kondogbia has been around for quite some time now. Whether it was at Valencia, whether it was at Atletico Madrid, whether he played as a centre-back or a defensive midfielder, this man is definitely a talented player. Once again, not the best in his position in the entire world, but definitely very reliable. Now, heading into our next nation, as I said when looking at the Central Republic of Africa, I thought that was a tricky one to do. But of course, next up, we've got Chad, the country that is ranked 181st in the world.
Wow, you suck.
Of course, very lowly ranked in terms of world football, and therefore it was a very tricky nation to do. But at the end of the day, the player that I went for was a man by the name of Casimir Ninja. Once again, I've got no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably going to get a bunch of comments at the end of this video saying how I pronounced everything wrong. But of course, he is playing as a left winger for the likes of Angola, obviously in the French First Division. So at the end of the day, as I said, although Chad don't have too many top quality footballers, this seems to be a man who's really broken out of the rest of the Chad football team. Of course, he seems to be out there playing for a top league. For the Chad national team, has scored 5 goals in 27 games. As I said, although not a world-class name, definitely seems to be a man who's kind of broken out of the rest of the national team. Comoros Islands is next. Now, of course, as we know, this is a nation that caused a lot of upsets in the recent African Cup of Nations. As we know, in terms of their attacking ability, they're given absolutely everything for a full 90 minutes.
Nice.
And therefore, I guess that's why you shouldn't be too surprised that I've gone for a man who plays an attack by the name of Faiz Samalani. As we know, he's a left winger who is playing in the Belgian Pro League as we speak, has scored 13 goals and gotten 5 assists in 29 games last season. As I said, once again, Comoros going forward attacking wise, they have seriously improved in the last few years, and they are a nation that could really upset a lot of teams' defense. As I said, looking at the likes of Faiz Samalani, he seems to be a player that really sticks out in a very promising team. The DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is next. Now, once again, although a nation that has quite a few promising players, at the end of the day, I had to go for the likes of Cedric Bakambu. Now, as we know, Cedric Bakambu is a player who's been around here and there.
Mr. Worldwide!
He's got a very, very long CV, and he's played for some very impressive clubs. Whether he played in the Liga or obviously now, as we speak, he's busy playing for Marseille in the French league. He's always been a very, very lethal striker and is the DRC's second top goal scorer of all time. As we know, a very, very lethal striker being linked to some top clubs around the world. And there's no surprise that this is why I think he is the DRC's best player. Now, moving from the DRC, we just have the C, the Republic of Congo, I guess. And of course, looking at Congo, once again, a nation that's got some really, really decent footballers throughout it. But in terms of their best possible footballer, I've gone for a man who, yes, I know this is going to sound very, very interesting, but I've gone for Bryce Samba. Now, of course, the reason that's interesting is because I don't believe he's played for the Congo national team. But of course, the reason that I've gone for Bryce Samba is because looking at him, he's played such a crucial role in the likes of Nottingham Forest gaining promotion to the Premier League. Of course, has spent 3 years at Nottingham Forest and 125 appearances. He has been their main man and a huge reason to why they've been promoted for the first time since 1999. Just to give you some perspective in terms of how long that is, that's older than me. That's 2 years before I was even born. Unfortunately, he won't be playing for Nottingham Forest next season. He has moved to the likes of Lens in the French league. But as I said, looking at the Congo goalkeeper, an absolutely brilliant man, and although not playing for the national team, definitely a decent player that they should consider. Next up, we've got the likes of Cote Vois, or Ivory Coast, if you want to call them that. Now, yes, I know I said in my intro that they can't go for the likes of Didier Drogba as he's not playing anymore. But you know what? That doesn't mean that they don't have a decent striker, and I just have to go for the likes of Sébastien Haller. Now, as we know, he used to want to represent the French national team, didn't quite get selected for them, and obviously in 2020 made his debut for Ivory Coast. And to be honest, this is one of the most lethal strikers in the entire world at the moment. I mean, the things that he's achieved. Obviously, as we know, he was an absolute star at Eintracht Frankfurt. Didn't quite make it at West Ham United, but since he's been in Ajax, he's been an absolute monster. Obviously, off the back of last season, got 21 goals and 7 assists in 31 games for Ajax. In terms of the Champions League, the most difficult league in the world, got 11 goals in 8 games. That is absolutely insane. I believe the fastest ever a player has reached that milestone. And of course, as I said, he's just moved to the likes of Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga, becoming one of the most expensive signings in the league's history. Sébastien Haller is a top quality talent, and amongst a lot of other talented players, is definitely a star for Ivory Coast. Next up, we're going to be diving into Djibouti, which sounds a lot dirtier than I intended it to sound like. But of course, looking at Djibouti, which I seem to do quite a lot. Okay, Finn, stay appropriate. But of course, looking at the likes of Djibouti, once again, a nation that I did struggle to maybe find one stick-out star, one standout star that was obvious. But at the end of the day, I settled for the likes of Anas Farah Ali, who is an attacking midfielder, obviously for Djibouti, has only played 3 games, but has gotten 1 goal in those 3 games, and is currently playing in the Norwegian league for Moss FK. Looking at him for Moss FK this season, 3 goals in 13 games. Once again, as I said, not an absolute superstar, but in terms of what Djibouti currently have, it's probably their best bet. A very, very easy decision next, because the next nation we're going to be talking about is Egypt, and of course, it's Mo Salah. Do I even have to give a reason to why it's Mohamed Salah? I mean, was in the race for a Ballon d'Or on many different occasions, won a Premier League, won a Champions League, arguably in many people's eyes is the best player in the entire world. I mean, it's Mo Salah. Equatorial Guinea is next. Now, of course, although they've got stars here and there, I've gone for the likes of Pedro Obiang. Now, of course, if that name does ring a bell to your ears, it is because of the fact that he played for West Ham United in the Premier League for 4 years. The 30-year-old midfielder, obviously now playing for Sassuolo in the Italian league at the moment. Once again, not an absolutely lethal midfielder, but a very, very solid option. Has got quite an impressive resume on him. And obviously, looking at him for Equatorial Guinea, has gotten 3 goals in 9 games for them. Once again, a pretty decent midfielder to have. The next country we're going to be talking about is going to be Eritrea. I am so sorry. I mean, I'm from Africa and I've never heard of this country before.
Who are you?
It can't just be me, can it? But obviously, in terms of the fact that I've never heard this country before, it wasn't actually that difficult to find a player that seems to be really decent for them, as I've settled for the likes of Mohamed Saeed. He is a midfielder playing in the Swedish league at the moment, and it's quite interesting looking at him statistically that he's been directly involved in 20% of the goals that his team have scored this season. That is obviously very, very impressive, and whatever kind of success this team does achieve, he would obviously play a major role in it. And although maybe you haven't heard of him before, it was quite interesting as he has played in the MLS before, and he actually came through the West Bromwich Albion Academy. Once again, I've never heard of this player before, but it's a relatively interesting and really impressive resume. Now, of course, talking about having never heard of players before, next up we've got the likes of Eswatini or Swaziland, depending where you're from. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where I have finally been defeated, as although I am South African and Eswatini is literally in South Africa, I cannot name a single player from Eswatini that I genuinely think deserves to be called their best.
That's gotta hurt!
Yes, although weirdly enough, if you look at their results, they've got some very impressive results as of late, and they've strung together some really good performances. But in terms of individuals, I cannot find one star man. If you're a fan of Eswatini or if you're from there, please put down in the comment section down below who you think your star player is. As I said, I've been defeated. Okay, jumping into our next nation, I feel slightly better as it is a slightly easier nation to go for, and it is going to be the likes of Ethiopia. Now, for Ethiopia, I've gone for a very promising midfielder by the likes of Shamilis Bekele, once again, sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right, who has 73 appearances for the Ethiopian national team. Currently playing his football in the Egyptian league, as we know, one of the most competitive leagues in the entirety of Africa, where throughout his career, he's gotten 45 goals and 15 assists in 193 games. So obviously a goal or an assist contribution in more than 1 in every 4 games. Once again, very decent midfielder, and once again was one of those players that looked very good and very confident in the recent African Cup of Nations. As we know, Ethiopia, when it comes to football, on their day they can be absolutely brilliant or absolutely poor, but when they do look good, it is usually because of this man. Next up, we've got the likes of Gabon. Now, yes, my pick for this is going to be very interesting, as it is going to be Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Now, the reason that this is interesting is because Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang retired from international football a few months ago, but despite that, I mean, he's still from Gabon, so I do still have the ability to mention.
Fair enough.
As you know, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, not a player who has to prove his worth to say. I mean, he's played for some of the top clubs around the world, from AC Milan to Borussia Dortmund to Arsenal, now Barcelona, and wherever he's gone, he seems to win trophies and he seems to be score goals. I mean, for Barcelona last season, he really seems to be the striker that lifted them out of their ruts and get them into a Champions League space once more. As you know, when he played for Borussia Dortmund, obviously he kind of kept Robert Lewandowski on his tiptoes when it came to winning the Golden Boot. And even for Arsenal, although he slowed down in his last year or two, did win 2 trophies with them. At the end of the day, say what you want about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but he is a world-class striker. Talking about world-class, next up we're going to be jumping into the Gambia. Now, once again, a team that really impressed me on so many different spectrums in the recent African Cup of Nations, as they do have a really decent squad, and at the end of the day, I've decided to choose the likes of Musa Baro. As we know, a very promising looking wing who, when it comes to club or country, this man has potential to achieve a lot. Only 23 years old in the recent African Cup of Nations, got 2 goals and 2 assists in 5 games, plays for Bologna in the top division of Italian football, where he got 6 goals and 6 assists in 34 games. As I said, at only 34 years old, this is a man who I believe will be the future of the Gambia and really help get the name of the nation out there. Absolutely brilliant. Now, jumping into our next nation, obviously if you've been watching my channel for a while now, you know that I'm a huge fan of this national team, as it is going to be the Black Stars of Ghana. Now, yes, I know I've made a lot of content around the Ghanaian national team over the last few months, but of course it's just a team that when I look at them, I just get so excited because I really believe they are going somewhere. That's why I make so much content about them. Obviously, a lot of players have swapped their international allegiances to be Ghanaian to maybe represent them at the World Cup. Obviously, from Tariq Lamptey to Hudson Odoi, Eddie Ketia, and now Inaki Williams and so many others, Ghana really have a team that is filled with some absolute superstars. But at the end of the day, I have to go for one of the old boys with Andre Ayew. As we know, when he played for Swansea in the Premier League, he was an absolute goal machine. Obviously didn't quite replicate that at West Ham United.
First time.
expected. But when it comes to Ghana, and obviously playing in the Equatorial League at the moment, he's an absolute beast. In Qatar last season, scoring 15 goals in 21 games. Not bad whatsoever. Obviously, looking at him at the end of the day, he is also Ghana's second top goal scorer of all time. Looking at Andre Ayew, I mean, an absolute beast. And although all this young blood is coming to Ghana, I would still call him the favourite. Now, going from one obvious pick to another, we've got Guinea next, and to me it just has to be the likes of Naby Keita. Obviously a few years ago, moved from RB Leipzig to Liverpool for £60 million. Look, I would argue that he hasn't reached that potential, or hasn't reached really what people thought that he would eventually become. But at the end of the day, looking at Naby Keita, 27 years old, he is still an absolutely fantastic footballer. When watching him in the recent African Cup of Nations, he was one of those players that when things were dull, when things were quiet, he absolutely switched things up. I would argue that he's also improved for Liverpool since coming back from his injury. Obviously this season had a moment or two where he looked very, very promising, and at the end of the day for this Ghanaian national team, 11 goals in 50 games probably is their star man. From Guinea, we now move on to the likes of Guinea-Bissau. Now, of course, once again, one of those nations who I wouldn't necessarily say it's an absolute superstar, but it is going to be the likes of Musa Baro, the right winger for the likes of Troyes. Once again, in the French top division. Once again, you see a lot of these players are playing in the French top division. But of course, looking at him, once again, as I said, looking at Musa Baro, once again, one of those players who chips in with a goal or an assist here or there, but not necessarily an absolutely lethal player, but once again on his day gets the job done. We now jump into our final 4 nations for part 1. As I said, if you guys do want to see a part 2 that's got your nations like Senegal, Nigeria and all of those, do leave a like down below, see if we can get this video to 40 likes. But of course, next up we have Kenya, obviously a team that's been disqualified for the African Cup of Nations due to political reasons. But obviously looking at the likes of Kenya, I initially thought it would be a difficult one and that I'd be forced to go for someone like Victor Wanyama, although he is an absolute legend of the game. I've actually found a very, very easy pick with the likes of Michael Alunga, obviously the captain of the Nigerian national team. I mean, looking at this man, I'm surprised I've never heard about him before. His current net worth is around £9 million, and looking at him for Kenya, 19 goals in 46 games, you can see why he's their captain. And obviously in the Equatorial League, same as Andre Ayew, he's gotten 24 goals in 20 games, more goals than games this season. How on earth have I never heard about this absolute African beast? This man going forward is an absolute rocket, and as I said, I'm surprised I've never heard of him before. Third final team, it is going to be Lesotho. Once again, a Southern African team. I did struggle slightly, but at the end of the day, I've decided to go for the likes of Sarah Motabeng, who is a striker for the Golden Arrows, currently playing in the South African Premier League. And looking at him in the South African Premier League, once again, not absolutely lethal, but for the Golden Arrows, has gotten 9 goals in 45 games, which, yes, not an absolutely lethal striker, but gets the job done. Obviously, 10 goals in 46 Lesotho games. Once again, although it doesn't sound massively impressive, once again, I guess you could get worse strikers. Second final team of the video, ladies and gentlemen, and we have Liberia. Now, of course, as we know, Liberia over the years have produced some fantastic footballers that they've given to the world, but of course, nowadays, I wouldn't quite say that they're as strong as they used to be. But the footballer I've decided to go for as their best football at the moment is a man by the name of Oscar Dorley, who plays for Slavia Prague, as we know, in the Czech Republic League. And at the end of the day, the 23-year-old fullback has gotten 27 appearances for the Liberian national team. As I said, once again, not one of those top quality footballers, but compared to other footballers from Liberia around the world, is one of the few playing for a top team. As you know, Slavia Prague has been an absolute giant in Czech Republic football over the last few years, maybe not quite as big as Red Star Belgrade. But as I said, this man seems to be a really, really big talent. And that, ladies and gentlemen, finally takes us to our final team of the video, as it is going to be the likes of Libya. I did think that this was going to be a team that I was going to struggle with quite a bit, but at the end of the day, it just had to be one man and one man alone by the name of Al Mazrati, a defensive midfielder who's currently playing for Braga in the Portuguese league. Obviously, last season played a major role in them winning a trophy, the Taça de Brasil, the 2021 one. As I said, sorry, I can't pronounce anything. It seems to be. I just fit every single stereotypical white boy thing, don't I? But of course, looking at him, as I said, played a major role in Braga winning a trophy last season, and of course in 2014 was part of them winning an African Nations Champions League, obviously playing for Liberia. As I said, this man seems to be a big part of their recent history, and that is why I've chosen him. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today's video. As I said, I've done about 30 nations in today's video, and I'll do the final one in a part 2 if you get this video to 40 likes. Obviously, tell me in the comment section down below, obviously, if you would have chosen another player over the ones that I chose in this video. And obviously, you don't have to tell me in the comment section that I pronounced anything wrong. I'm 100% aware that I did. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you are doing super well. I hope that you enjoyed this video. As I said, like, subscribe, all of the good things, and I'll see you in a part 2. Maybe. We'll see. You have to do it.